Should I look here? Yes, I'm recording. Okay. So I got that.
Okay.
Let me do this. Looks like the camera is aimed pretty accurately. Fairly accurately, and I'm sitting here okay. And I turn this off and I get some of the glare out of the lenses. Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
I am yours. I am at your service.
Yes.
So, I think today it could be very interesting to talk about intuition, because we talk with Lee about this subject, and today I just watched on the weekly television series on the course where Jose talked, and I searched if he talked about intuition, but there are a lot of theme, but not intuition, and I think it could be interesting to talk about that. Is it used in the method? How did you observe Mr. Silva to use it, and how you use it now, your intuition, or perhaps you don't use the intuition? Can you talk about intuition?
Frank, are you recording?
Non, il est déjà en train de
Oh,
l'enregistrer.
okay. So you can't.
Faudra lui demander à la fin, parce que sinon on l'aura pas.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry I interrupted. I just thought you might have forgotten. Okay. So, actually, Ed, when Pank says Jose rarely mentioned intuition, I think it was more that he didn't actually use the word intuition. He tended to talk about ESP all the time, didn't he? Rather than intuition as such.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
I suppose it depends on your definition.
Well,
of
he talked about subjective communication a lot.
Yeah.
He referred to it that way an awful lot. There are a whole lot of different ways. Psychic ability, he talked about that a lot. I know he mentioned psychic ability. And there are all kinds of psychic abilities, but they all come back to the mind.
Yep.
It's all about the mind. It's not the tarot cards. It's not the stars. It's not the Ouija board. It feels like it is, but it's not the Ouija board. It's not the dowsing rods or any. It's all the mind that does it all.
Yeah.
But you know how he got started on it? He didn't believe in it to start with. He was like most of the rest of us back then. He didn't believe in it. He was just trying to find ways to help his kids do better in school. So he was using hypnosis. I guess he read about that when he started studying psychology and began to work with his own children to see what he could do with them, and discovered that using hypnosis, he could take them to a deep level. And they were young anyway, so they were at low frequencies to begin with. He could take them to deep levels, and he could make stronger impressions on their brain neurons. He needed to impress information 3 times, he found, at different levels, impress it, either bring them out or do something different, and then go back again, but be at a different level, and impress it a second time, and then a third time at another level. I think that may be how he came up. You had mentioned once, how did he come up with the idea of 3 times a day would be good? So maybe that's where that number 3 started kind of working in with him, that he saw that worked better than, didn't gain a lot more to do it more than 3 times, but it did need 3 times to get really good benefit. And this was working. They were remembering things, they were recalling information. And then there was that day after about 3 years when his daughter Isabel started guessing his mind. Mm-hmm. And he realized not only could she use her mind to detect more information, or to detect the information that he had impressed there, that she had impressed there on her own brain neurons, her mind could detect information that was impressed on his brain neurons. Mm-hmm. What he was planning to ask her, the poems that he was going to ask her to recite, he had shuffled the order so they were not in the same order that he had read them. So he was going to ask, she was one ahead of him, but she had them all in the correct order. So at that point, he got really curious. What's going on here? How could she do this? She never exhibited this kind of behavior before. What's happening? And he began to ask her other things, like I'd give her an address somewhere around town, and she would tell him what was at that address. Things that he didn't know, but, they lived in Laredo, so maybe they'd driven by there and had seen it. So even tried it out of town, maybe in San Antonio, 2.5 hours away, 3-hour drive away, and asked her addresses there. And they went up and drove up there, and sure enough, she could identify things accurately. And he realized that she was functioning as a psychic. She could guess his mind about things like that. He realized that if she could do that, if she could do that, she could do more when it came to getting good grades, good scores on a test, and good grades in her classes. She could do more than just recall information that had been impressed on her own brain neurons. She could get information off the teacher's brain neurons or anybody else's. So, and I think somebody who took the class in the early days had this happen. There was a question on a test that they didn't know the answer to. They didn't remember the information at all. They had missed one day of class, so maybe that was a day that was covered. Went back, checked his notes, and there was nothing in the notes. Turned out that was something that was in the discussion that was not in the book. So it wasn't in the book, wasn't in his notes, but it was on the teacher's brain neurons. So the Silva student was able to project his mind, use subjective communication, psychic ability, ESP, intuition, clairvoyance, whatever you want to call it. Any of those names will work. Had detected that information and got the right answer, even though it had never been impressed on its own brain neurons. You know, they did go to Guam. A group went over to Guam and changed the course. Unfortunately, everybody thinks they can improve the course. They changed things around. So after a couple of years, they got kicked out of Guam. Never did get to finish the project, but they had some great anecdotal material along the way. One of my favorite stories was this young girl, junior high school girl, maybe 12, 13 years old. And her mother had misplaced her purse. Had her driver's license in it and the keys in it and stuff. And she was really upset about it. So the daughter said, let me find it for you. She went to her level, projected to where the purse was located, told her mother, go look at this location. And the mother went and looked, and sure enough, there was a purse. She was so relieved and felt so good about that. Unfortunately, the people in charge of the project, no, that's not what they wanted. They wanted to make stronger impressions on brain neurons. And I'm like, why? Why? You've got this young girl who found this purse for her mother. Can you imagine how exciting that was for her to be able to help her mother that way, to use her mind that way, and the confidence that she would have now when she grew up, knowing that anytime there was a problem that needed to be solved, she could use her mind to detect information wherever it was. Imagine that ability. I was thinking, Pank, about what you might do. I assume, I think, if I understand right, what you do is you use your hypnosis. I gather like hypnotherapy. Would that be a correct term for what you do?
Yeah.
You're a hypnotherapist. Okay.
Yeah.
So you do that. People come to you. They have problems. They tell you what the problem is. Sometimes they may not tell you everything about the problem. They may think something's not important and not mention it. They may not want to talk about something for one reason or another. So you can use your intuition to find out what they're not telling you. I'm sure you can use your experience to do that too, and asking questions and observing their body language and those things. But you have another tool in the toolbox of your intuition to help find out. I was thinking maybe sometimes you would have a really difficult case, and no matter what you're doing, you're not making the kind of progress you want to make with it. And you need something else, another idea to try, something else to do. And you're wondering, what could I do? How about if you could talk to an expert? If you could talk to somebody who has faced this challenge before and who found a way to handle it and got through it, maybe they would have some tips or advice for you that would help you to know what to do next and to go through that. But that expert's not here. Maybe that expert's not alive anymore. Maybe you'd like to talk to Milton Erickson about it. Can you imagine if you could actually go in and find out from Milton Erickson, ask him, what would you do in this situation? Would you push harder? Would you back off? Would you try to come at it from an angle? I don't know what it would take. I mean, that's your field. But the questions that you could ask Milton Erickson, you can. You can anytime you need to. Anytime you need to. The key word there is need. When you need to solve a problem, to relieve suffering, to help it work, all you've got to do Just say, let's take a break, take a half hour, go relax a little bit and come back, and then we'll continue the session. Okay. And then you go sit down somewhere and get inside Milton Erickson's head. Find out what would he do. Clear your mind, ask the questions and clear your mind. Think of something else. Distract yourself. Different topic, something else. Then come back and, okay, what would Milton Erickson advise me to do? And whatever ideas come to you, it'll feel like they're your ideas. They're really coming from Milton Erickson. At least you can act on that and see what happens. If you've worked enough health cases, the health detection and correction cases, done enough of that to show your intent to really solve problems and get the experience, like the little girl had the experience with the correct answers, you can get feedback on the detection part of those cases immediately. If you're working cases on people that you know, you can work cases on people as soon as they sign up for a session with you. You can work a case before you ask them what the problem is. Mm-hmm. You can do it in a matter of seconds. Did you read in, I think it's in the Everyday ESP book, got a story, the doctor in Mississippi, Calvin Poole, took the course with us, took the course with Alex, the Ultramind course with Alex. He contacted us, contacted me. We weren't teaching yet. We didn't have authorization to teach Ultramind yet. So we got him signed up, took the instructor training with Alex, although I don't think he ever taught it. But he told us, he said when he goes in to see a patient, he works emergency room a lot. And he was working for the VA, Veterans Administration, for a while. I think he's working in a hospital now or has his own practice or something. He said when he would go in to see a patient, go into the examining room and the patient's there and he picks up the chart on the way in. And as he goes in and first looks at the patient, he's thinking, what's the problem? Okay, let's see what the problem is. And whatever idea comes to him, that's what he goes with. And he checks it out, looks at the chart, and the chart says, okay, those are the symptoms that he thought it was. Those are the symptoms. And he's thinking, this is what's causing the symptoms. Now, usually it could be this or that or the other. You know, it could be a variety of things. He thinks this is what's probably causing the symptoms. He asks some questions. He does whatever test he can do examining her. And he does that very quickly. He doesn't spend a whole lot of time with it. And he orders a test to confirm his psychic diagnosis, to confirm that he's right about those symptoms. And if the tests come back positive, he knows he's got it. He hasn't spent extra money on other tests that aren't necessary. He hasn't taken extra time and delayed getting the treatment that the patient needs by going in and just checking on everything because he knows with 80% accuracy, the best psychics we know, Mr. Silva does use the term psychics for that. The best psychics we know, whether they're trained psychics or natural psychics, overall average accuracy is 80%. 4 out of 5 times, 8 out of 10 times will be accurate. 80%, just an individual psychic working that way. So you do need to do the testing. You do need to do some steps to confirm what you think it is. If there's something else he's not quite sure, he may take another test just to eliminate that, which would also go back and confirm that. Can you imagine how valuable things like that can be with intuition? There's the value of it. Mm. How valuable does Jose Silva think it is? You were wondering about that. I can give you 2 quotes, one from him and one from another guy that had an opinion on it too. When Jose Silva, it was around 1953 that he realized he had trained Isabel to be a psychic. So 51, 52 years later, in 1997, November 1997, he had been trying some different classes to see if he could come up with something new. He'd gotten a message he needed to do something new. He needed something else. Then he realized what he needed was an ESP course, a spiritual course is what he called it. This was what he needed. So November of 1997, he invited the usual crowd, people like Wanda Morris in Houston, longtime instructor in Houston. She'd come over to Laredo for anything he was doing. He would go out over to Houston and try out new courses. She welcomed him with anything he wanted to try, do things there. She was one of those with the doctor that was with him, the one that we had programmed to. He had dyslexia and had been rejected from medical school a couple of times. They didn't even want to give him another chance. So we had to do some programming so he could get into, and he did. He got into medical school and is a practicing physician today, thanks to some help with Silva and some help passing the entrance exams, getting them to give him the entrance exams verbally instead of in writing, so that he could show what he knew and what he could do. And they realized he could be a good doctor, and he is a good doctor. He helped me get the disability payments that get qualified for disability that I needed. He did that because he had known me for 20 years when the post-polio problem started. I said, hey, I need some help. It was when he was in this class, the Ultramind ESP system course. Well, these people came over, and I've got the recording of the opening session. I wasn't able to make it through the entire course, but I went for the opening session to get that recorded. Mr. Silva started this way. Everybody there, he welcomed them. Then he says to them, he says, welcome to the ultimate of the ultimate. Somebody challenged me, says, do you have anything from him saying that Ultramind is better than what we've been teaching? I said, well, let me look and see. Let me check and see. And I heard that. He said, this is the ultimate of the ultimate. What we did was to take what is the most valuable thing that we discovered in these 50 plus years. What is the most valuable thing that we can teach people? And it is psychism. That was a word he used, psychism. Teach people to use their natural intuition, their natural psychic ability. It's on one of the websites. I can send you a link so you can listen to that opening session and hear the way that he said it. I think it's on one of the websites. If not, I can send you a link to it. And you can hear it. It's just audio. I don't have a video. But you can hear him talk about the ultimate of the ultimate. Psychism, psychic ability is the most valuable thing for reasons I was just talking about. Now, who else had that same opinion? A guy named Albert Einstein. You've heard of him probably. He is the symbol of genius, the guy with the hair sticking out, the white hair sticking out like a Brillo pad or something. Albert Einstein, what did he say about it? He referred to it as imagination. When he talks about imagination, he's talking about the mind. The brain is the physical body, part of the physical body. That's in the physical world, the objective dimension. The mind is not physical. The mind is subjective. The mind is non-physical. So when we're talking about the mind, we're talking about imagination and visualization. We're talking about the mind. So Albert Einstein says visualization is more important than knowledge, because knowledge encompasses everything that you know. Imagination encompasses everything that is known, everything that ever has been known, and everything that ever will be known. That's how valuable it is to be able to use your mind that way. So that's why we're so excited about that. And why from the very beginning, once we mentioned Jerry Seavey the last time, and when he said to me, that's when I said I certainly didn't take the course to learn how to work health cases. I didn't want to talk about it in the introductory lecture. I didn't want to scare people off. And Jerry was walking out of the room just ahead of me, and he spun around and said, you didn't think that's why you took the course? And I realized he was right. Something inside of me wanted it desperately. So within the first 15 or 20 minutes of the introductory lecture, I was talking about Isabel guessing her father's mind, demonstrating psychic ability. She was a psychic, and nobody ever objected to that. Nobody ever objected to me doing that. And I had about as good a closing rate as your typical instructor had, 20, 25, 30%. Something like that of the people that would come to introductory lectures. I close about that many of them. So it works. So even back then, once you could explain it in a way that people could comprehend it, they couldn't argue with that. They couldn't argue with the fact that he wasn't trying to prove something. It came as a surprise to Jose Silva. And he found it to be so valuable that if it's true, and I tell him I didn't believe in it. So if it turns out to be true, hey, if it's not true, you get your money back. You're not risking any money at all. The only thing that you're investing is a little time. Back then it was 2 weekends. Now it's 1 weekend with us. But you're investing a couple of weekends. And if it turns out this isn't for you, it doesn't work for you for whatever reason, doesn't matter. If it doesn't work for you, you get your money back. So what did you get for the 2 weekends that you invested? You get knowledge, the knowledge that this is not for you. You won't be wondering about it. I wonder if I missed out on something that could have been valuable. No, you have that knowledge that it wasn't. So come on, find out for yourself, whatever it is. And people come and people love it. So Does that help a little bit about some of the terminology that he used? So he did use all of that kind of terminology. By the way, for the first Ultramind class he taught, he also had dowsing rods in there and had people go douse for things. He didn't continue that. He just stayed with psychometry. And the psychometry is tremendous. We do that after the anatomy of a pet. After that, we have people practice psychometry and they accurately detect, something belong to somebody else in the room. So he can't do health cases that way. He can't work on health issues, not when somebody's present in the classroom there. But would hold something in their hand, describe what they're like physically, what their personality's like and so forth. And then they could see that they're accurate about it. It's a little bit more, we had to come up with some different ideas to do it in webinars, but it's working great in webinars. I think the confidence that they have from having done that, then after we do the human anatomy and then we work health cases and they detect health problems that people have, they're amazingly accurate, more accurate than I ever saw them in BLS. Well, I can't say ever, more accurate than I typically saw them in the basic lecture series. I did a class in a prison one time, a bunch of young inmates. I think they were the most accurate psychics I ever had in case working. I don't know what the deal was there, but they had nothing to lose. They were already locked up, so they just went for it. And they were just tremendously accurate. That was nice to see.
What did you observe about the change of Mr. Silva with the time? Do you feel like you said in 1997, it just say, okay, now the ultimate of ultimate is to work in ESP? How did you feel the change or the focus on about Jose Silva? How did you observe that? How did you see this change in his daily work or in training? You observe that he come more and more in the ESP part more than the other part. How did you observe that?
Well, from observing him, and first time I met him up close, I guess, was his 65th birthday. He was in Miami teaching an ultra seminar on his 65th birthday, which would have been 1979. And I asked him if he was ready to retire. Could we throw a retirement party for him? I just met him. So could we have a retirement party for you? And he didn't laugh or anything. He never would laugh at my jokes. I guess he didn't think I was funny. But I was with him there. But I've heard a lot of recordings going back to that 1972 class. And if you listen to that, you can hear all of the work he did on things that we would consider ESP, wouldn't we? Like prenatal age regression. Wouldn't that fit into that category of ESP and phenomena and so forth? What were we doing? And so many different things like that. The holistic faith healing and stuff like that. There were so many things that he did. He always considered using the mind that way to solve problems to be the key to everything. I think that the three things that he got into was first to help his kids in school, and he had that by 1953. And he was also, I think, probably a parallel course working with holistic faith healing, probably from living in Laredo where there were healers, there were the brujos, the witch doctors, and so forth. And once he began researching other things and doing hypnosis and saw how the mind worked, that's probably what got him turned on to that. I would just take a guess at that. Because I recall one time he said he saw a healer, went in to see what a healer was doing. She went in to this woman who was very sick and told her she was going to have to draw all the evil out of her body. It was the evil that was making her sick. She was going to get all the evil out of her body, and left a bowl there with some petals, flowers and leaves and things like that. Real nice looking little bowl there by her bedside by the window. And said, I'll be back in the morning and let's see if this draws all the evil out. So he was suspicious. He waited up all night, waited to see if anything was going to happen. And sure enough, during the night, the healer sneaks up to the window and had left it unlocked, reaches in and puts something in the bowl. So in the morning, it was all dark and murky. Okay, the evil is taken out. I think probably he understood enough from hypnosis to understand that if you get the subject to believe it, then they'll do it themselves. Right? I mean, I think that's kind of how that goes. If just get them to believe it enough to take down the inhibitions, it's amazing what people can do. I know from studying weightlifting enough, I know if we can just get rid of the inhibitions, we'll lift more weight. And I think that's why invariably lifters will set new personal bests, new personal records in competition. They lift more in competition than they were ever able to lift in training. So there's just no way to duplicate that. Just taking those inhibitions down some way when it's really competitive and they're really going for it. So I think that's what got him into that. So he was doing those two things kind of in parallel. But once Isabel guessed his mind, I think from what I can tell, what he was doing after that, he just wanted to prove, well, he contacted Dr. Ryan. I trained my daughter to be a psychic, J.B. Ryan at Duke University, who was studying natural psychics, and did a great service demonstrating that some people do have natural psychic ability. And he told Mr. Silva, he said, well, you're very fortunate. Your daughter is a natural psychic, but you didn't pre-test her ahead of time. He said, oh, I've known her all her life. She never demonstrated anything like this before. I think I would have noticed. Dr. Ryan wasn't buying it. So he spent the next 10 years working with, 29 more people, children, grown-ups, 29 more people, working with how could he condition them to get to the alpha level without falling asleep. That's all he was trying to do. Not a hypnotic induction necessarily, but trying to get to the alpha level is light level of sleep. So what can I do to get them to the alpha level and keep them mentally active, not go to sleep, give them just enough to do, just enough. That's what we do in the centering exercise, isn't it? Start to go to sleep, relax, close your eyes, relax physically, relax mentally. Isn't that what we do when we're starting to go to sleep? Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, relax physically, relax mentally. The old 5-to-1 method, we actually had them tire their eyelids by staring at something and trying not to blink to get the eyelid fatigue, to get moving in the direction of sleep. But we keep talking to them, which is what sleep researchers do when they want to disturb somebody's sleep and keep them from going to level 2, level 3, level 4 sleep or whatever. They just talk to them until they're up to the level they want. Then they stop talking to them. They don't bring them out all the way. That's what we do. So we're not hypnotizing people really, and it's not yoga. It's neither one. Yoga and hypnosis are the parents of mind control, they always said. But it's similar to both parents, but it's not the same as either parent. It has the characteristics of both. So he worked with that and found the systems to do it, found out how to perfect it, to polish it, and he tested. He created started an organization here in Laredo. We got a picture of them, about 30 people in there posing for the picture, called the Laredo Parapsychology Foundation. It might be on that josesilva.net website. If it's not, I'll have to find it and put it on there. But the Laredo Parapsychology Foundation, where they got together, and that's what they did, was test out psychic ability to see what they could do and how they could work with it. So his interest was there. Now, when the artist in Amarillo wanted him to come up and train them, I think he realized, even though they wanted to be clairvoyants, that was the term they were using. Dord Fitz, their art instructors, had told them, you cannot be a great artist unless you are a great clairvoyant. Not that it helps. He just said you cannot be a great artist unless you are a great clairvoyant. So they wanted to be great clairvoyants. They heard about Jose Silva. Dord Fitz brought him up to Amarillo to talk to the group. Nelda Sheets was in that group, and she was already thinking. She went over and asked him, Mr. Silva, how much would you charge us? We come down to, if we could get a few people to come to Laredo, how much would you charge us to train us to be great clairvoyants? And Dord Fitz was waiting for that. I think Nelda says she thinks Dord Fitz was waiting for that. He listening for that. And when he heard that, he came over and says, how many people would you need for us to have up here for you to come here and train us? So that's what he did. They made a deal. He had more than 70 people in that first class. And he took about a month, I think, to take it. He would go up and do, I don't think he was even doing all of 101, what we now call 101. It was 3 4-hour sessions. So that's where we got the 4, 8, 12. And two conditioning cycles in each one, which finally explained to me, okay, the last 2 conditioning cycles in 101, sleep control, dream control, to awake control, no, sleep control, to awake control. That's one. Dream control and headache control. But how can you talk about sleep control without talking about dream control? I mean, it's sleep and dream cycles you go through. If you explain the cycles, they're sleep and dream cycles. So I didn't understand why everybody was trying to separate them. Well, he didn't. The way he taught it, when he taught in 1979, first time he taught the basic lecture series in a decade at least, and I was here. I was determined to be sitting here listening to that class. That's what he did. He talked about sleep, dreams. He talked about all of those techniques from both conditioning cycles before he did the first conditioning cycle. Then in the conditioning cycle, he just did the 3 techniques. Then he answered a few more questions, did the other conditioning cycle with the other techniques. And it's the same thing when you start 202, where you've got the mental screen to improve visualization, imagination, and you remember how he phrases that. Why? What is the purpose? What are the benefits of the mental screen? For improvement of visualization, imagination, clairvoyance, and memory. And memory was the thing he put last. Clairvoyance was a part of it at that point. That's the term he used there, was clairvoyance. But it was there. So we had the mental screen, the memory pegs, then and you can make stronger impressions on brain neurons by doing what we teach with the memory pegs. Use visualization, imagination, association, and a lot of enthusiasm. When you're reading a lesson, when you're listening to a teacher, talk to you, tell you, explain something to you, visualize what you're reading, visualize what the teacher's explaining. Use your imagination to make it, to exaggerate it, make it associate it with something so that it'd be easier to remember. And just make it big, and it's easy to remember. And then to make it even better, 2 different techniques. One uses 3 fingers technique when you're listening to a lecture. When you're reading, you need your eyes open, so it's a 2-step formula. Both of them designed to help you make even stronger impressions on brain neurons. And then the final thing, to use ESP, does he call it that? To get the answer from the teacher. I think it's called ESP somewhere, isn't it? In a preview of the next session, using ESP to get answers on tests, something like that. I'm thinking of it like local ESP because it's using the aura. You're in the presence of the teacher. So anybody can do that, whether you've established the right brain point of reference or not. So all of that, but both of those conditioning cycles can be explained all at one time, at least the basics of it, and then get into little detail for the second conditioning cycle. So he did it that way. So he was always, the way I see it, he was always thinking about that. But how do you get people to come take the course? And how do you convince people, first of all, that they got a mind? I didn't know I had a mind. I did not know. I wanted to help my weightlifting. And when the instructor said, the brain is like a computer, the mind is the programmer that programs the computer. Oh, there was my answer. I didn't know I had a mind. That was the thing I needed. And a book I found, a neurosurgeon named Wilder Penfield, wrote a whole book. I found it 2 or 3 years later after I was teaching the course. He had written this whole book, early 70s, 1971, 72. And I was kind of wondering about it. And then I realized he got to the end of the book and he stated that he had changed his opinion that the mind was something separate from the brain that could not be explained by functions of the brain. Not everything that we attribute to the mind could be explained by functions of the brain. And that was different than the opinion that he had argued in favor of for 20 years. He was very respected and people listened to him. He said he had changed his mind. So if that was the case, when Jose Silva started wanting to go out and teach people to be clairvoyant, psychics, teach them ESP, we didn't even believe we had a mind that we could use. How are you going to get people to come to class? You had to have something else to entice them to come to class. Then once he had us in class, how is he going to get us to give them a chance? I don't know about you, Lee, when you came. Maybe you were better. But I know in 1975, if I had come to class and we had done the centering exercise, okay, I'd have stayed for that. But then if the very second conditioning cycle, if they had said, okay, imagine you're standing in the center of your living room facing the south wall. Now go up, touch the south wall. Now project yourself inside your south wall. I would have got up and walked out of class. I don't care how much Al and Vera Christensen had tried to convince me to stay. I would not have stayed. It had just been too ridiculous for me. I would not have stayed. But look at all of the techniques that we had. I imagine going into my home and the first set of formula type techniques, first formula type technique, went into my home, went into the room where I spend more time than any other room, the bedroom. You spend 1/3 of every day in the bedroom sleeping. May not be aware consciously that you're there, but you're there. So in the bedroom sleeping, and instead of having sheep jump over a fence, which is what we all learned about, okay, we got something else that's a little more involving, I guess. So things like that, okay. And he just continued doing things like that, one after another, taking it. Isn't that what a hypnotist does? I'm not going to say anymore, but isn't that what a hypnotist does? Just start you with something. Okay, I can close my eyes. If you want me to close my eyes, I'll close my eyes. Okay, I can't pretend I can't open them. Okay, I'll play along. I'll pretend I can't open my eyes. That's what people tell me. That's what hypnotists have told me, that subjects will say. Subjects feel like they're just making it up, right? They feel like they're voluntarily doing it, but they could open their eyes anytime they wanted to. Alex told me that. Our old general manager, Lee knows Alex, Alex Gonzalez, for 20 some years, 25 years. I worked for him for 20 years. He told me that. He said, oh, yeah. He said, Uncle Joe hypnotized me. He used me as a subject one time. And he said, he didn't really hypnotize me. I wasn't hypnotized. I could have got up and walked out anytime I wanted to, but I didn't want to embarrass him, so I just played along. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Hahn, Dr. J. Wilfred Hahn, from Mind Science Foundation, a great parapsychology researcher, was the first straight scientist to support Jose Silva, and a fabulous hypnotist. He talks about that. He had one example. I don't recall all the details now, but a guy that wanted to stop smoking. So he'd hypnotized him and told him to stop smoking. And the guy said, you didn't do anything. I don't feel like I should pay you. He says, well, I'll tell you what, come back in a couple of weeks. And if you don't feel like I did anything, if you feel the same way in a couple of weeks, I'll give you a full refund. Something to that effect. That might not have been exactly what he did, but something to take a little time and then see what happened. And sure enough, over that period of time, it worked. And the guy had stopped smoking. He said, what did you do? I didn't feel like you did a thing to me. Doctor said, well, that's what it's supposed to feel like. It's not supposed to feel that way. So I wondered for more than 20 years, the biggest question I had, even after Mr. Silva died, I still had that question. And one night, not able to do much work, not able to work too many hours a day. So spending a lot of time just relaxing, just trying to get rested up so I could do a few things the next day, massaging wherever I had muscle spasms and so forth. I was figuring out how to deal with all of that. And I had a lot of time to think. And all of a sudden, it was just one of those thoughts. Jose Silva was a hypnotist. Then I realized what had happened. Then I realized why he had stayed and why it had worked for me and why it had been such a profound effect on me. Don't tell anybody. Let's let that be our secret, okay? Let's don't tell people what the secret is of why we're getting results. But back then, I think that's simply what he had to do. It was necessary to do. Now, anybody that still doesn't believe in this stuff, anybody who doesn't want to be a psychic and all that, hey, they got to start at 101 and go through the process, because the process brings us along. It brought me along. Now, it wasn't any bigger skeptic than I was. And Marie Buckingham, one of my instructors, who was going to file fraud charges when once she had completed the course and had proof that it was all baloney and it wasn't real. I mean, if it could convince us, it could work for anybody. But I really think he always felt that way and was always just kind of frustrated about that. I know I was. And the other thing, and even his own brother, Juan, Juan's, you know how Juan got into it. Juan had this terrible health problem after World War II. When he got back from World War II, his body would swell up. He couldn't breathe. It's like he was choking, he was suffocating. And the army, the government had sent him to specialists all over the country. They tried for a couple of years to find out what it was, to correct the problem. He was really concerned he was going to die. And his brother, Jose, kept saying, let me work with you. I found some things here that work. Let me see if I can help you. Well, I kept saying, no, I don't want you trying your voodoo on me. I don't want you doing your voodoo on me. And finally, one of Juan's friends says, look, Juan, why don't you let him try? Why? Well, because if he tries, one of two things will happen. If it works, you'll be done with this illness. You'll be well. You'll be healthy. That'd be worthwhile, wouldn't it? Yeah, but it's not going to work. It's okay. If it doesn't work, then he'll quit bothering you. You let him try. If it doesn't work, he won't be bothering you, nagging you about having it work. Well, that makes sense. So Juan said, okay, you can try it. So Jose did the confusion technique with him, told him that night, you'll have an episode this night, gave something for a reinforcing mechanism or something. You may wake up tonight with an episode. If you do, don't do anything about it. Just let it run its course, let it go, and you'll never have another one. And he did. And that was it. And Juan was absolutely convinced that it saved his life. He had made a promise that if you can help me deal with this, that I promise to bring at least one person into this training, bring at least one person into this work that you're doing every week, at least one person a week. Well, of course, he did far, far more than that. The rest of his life, he was bringing thousands of people in. He is the one who took the course all over the world. He had the business background, the factory, he became an inventor, invented a machine. People, in fact, some business people in Mexico said they'd buy the patent if he'd come down and run the factory to build the machines. And he traveled around. I didn't know this until Joe told me just recently. Juan traveled all over the world to other countries selling the machines, setting up franchises or setting up licensing agreements, not franchises, but licensing agreements for people to manufacture the machine. That's how he knew how to carry mind control around the world. He had contacts that could get him started. And where he didn't have contacts, he knew how to find people who could start and run a business with instructors, with salespeople, with organizers, and so forth, and get things going. And that's what got this going around the world. That's why we're not doing it today. That's the missing ingredient. We need somebody like Juan Silva who knows how to do that kind of thing. I don't. I'm not a business person. I'm a reporter. What do I know about business? But yeah, I think Jose really with that, I think he just did what he had to do. And another thing, his explanations through the years, he molded them and shaped them to fit what the public was interested in at the time, what the public could understand. When I got into it, we're kind of at the end of the alpha brainwave fad or whatever you'd call it. For 2 or 3 years, people had been talking about alpha brainwaves. There were books on it. I'd read a couple of books and they didn't make any sense to me. But I think by the time I took the course in 1975, that was about the end of that. And not too long after that, I think Sperry's research got out there, the split brain research, where they cut the corpus callosum. They said the right hemisphere is creative, the left hemisphere is logical, sequential, and so forth. Well, I think they're deciding today there is some specialization there, but it would really make sense if the right hemisphere is where we store our subjective impressions that we're getting, the subjective data, and the left hemisphere, the objective data, what we hear and see and so forth, then this is the data we use logically. This is the data that we can, just take the whole picture all at once. We get the idea. All of a sudden we get the picture and the whole thing is laid out in front of it. I've had that happen every now and then. I have that and I spend the next half hour just going through it step by step to make sure that I understand it right, that when I think I know really does work out. But it's just in an instant. It's amazing when that happens. I just think, how does this happen? So I think it may be something like that. So I've been having to go back in some of the books and some of the other earlier things that I did and change the meaning of left hemisphere, right hemisphere of what we do. That it's a type of data that we store. And what we're doing is synchronizing the data. And just recently I've started thinking of it like a smartphone. You've got a lot of data on your smartphone. You got a lot of information. You can look up things there. If you need to remind yourself of something, what was the wording for this, and how is this happening? Where is this? Who's this? Where's this person's address, and so on. That's good on your cell phone. But what about data that's not on your cell phone? If you're connected to the internet, you're in great shape. Being connected to the internet is like having ESP. Cut off that ESP for somebody that doesn't have ESP or has it but doesn't know they have it and doesn't use it. They don't have that data. If you're connected to the internet, you can go and find out what Milton Erickson said about a certain topic. You can find out what somebody observed Milton Erickson do, the observations of somebody watching them filled in with the things that Milton Erickson has himself said about it, but you've got to have internet access to get that if it's not on your smartphone. So when it comes in, once your smartphone finds that data, it brings it back. But it doesn't bring back Milton Erickson's voice. Milton Erickson's voice is on a recording somewhere. That recording, those sound waves are converted into some kind of radio wave. You can't see radio waves. You can't feel radio waves, right? But your smartphone can. When those radio waves come into the smartphone, okay, come into the right hemisphere, to the right-hand side of the smartphone. The radio waves come in, your smartphone decodes them, and converts them back into sound waves. And then it passes them over to the left side as sound recordings. And that's where your media player is and the speaker so that you can hear it. Does that make any sense? I'm trying to figure this out. Been trying to figure this out for a couple of months now of how to say that. This is how far I've gotten with it so far. What we're doing with left hemisphere, right hemisphere, going to the alpha level so that we can access data on either. When we project into a piece of stainless steel, we have looked at the stainless steel, project into it, how much light is there? How does it compare outside the steel to inside the steel? We are synchronizing the objective data with the subjective data. What is the temperature? How does it compare? What is the odor? What about solidity of material? What does it sound like when you knock on it? How solid does it feel like it is? We're coordinating and synchronizing the data on those two different storage areas, and they are connected through the alpha level. So that's what we're doing. Then we compare each metal that we test with the others. Yeah, and people say, well, I don't get anything. We didn't ask you to wait to get something. We asked you, what is it? Tell me. Make it up. Tell me something. Don't tell me I don't know. Tell me something. Give it to me. Doesn't matter what it is. It's your own imagination. So whatever you think it is, that's what it is. That's the way we do it. The amazing thing is that 1972 advanced course in mind control, I remember hearing him say something about that, talking about how a person could do that on their own. And I thought, well, no wonder the Ultramind Complete Home Seminar, people are able to do it on their own. Joe told me to make the recordings available to the public. I recorded that for instructor training. That's why I talk so much on there. Wanted to give as many examples and as many case studies and things like that as I could so that instructors could pick out what they wanted to use in their classes, and then ended up putting that out there for the public. I think it's probably still a good idea because if somebody doesn't relate to one example, maybe they relate to another. In a class, you can kind of get a feel for what they want to hear, how they need to hear it explained. But it's working great, and that's why it'll work with webinars. So wow, because for so long a time, Mr. Silva said we had to do it in person. We had to do that ESP part in person. You know what I think it was there? I think it was the instructor's belief. I think it was the instructor's belief. Lee has tremendous belief. I know that from having met and observed you during instructor training. The way you perform during instructor training, you got great belief and great confidence in what you're doing. Where does belief come from? Not because you tell yourself. There's really only one way to get belief, I think. Just one way. What we're talking about, the only way to get belief is experience. When you experience something and you have a success, no matter how small that success is, you work a case and the only thing you get right, the problem was in the chest area. You didn't get the right organ. You didn't get, hey, take that, the chest area, use that as your belief. Build on that. Review that at level. Recall anything you can about that. What you imagine it looking like or feeling like. I get a lot of stuff from my hands or feelings or what you heard, what you smelled. Anything you can think of, and build on that. The next time you get a little bit further, now you've got two successes, two little bitty successes. You finally get several little successes and you keep reviewing them at alpha. And every time you review them, you strengthen your belief. You build on that confidence. And after a while, you got enough confidence, you have another success in another area. And now you've got two different areas you're having successes in, and more and more and more. Every time you program to help somebody get something they need. I was working in a print shop when I took the course. I wanted an IBM executive typewriter. It's one that has the proportional spacing. Each letter has its own size, just the width it needs to be. That much more professional looking. I wanted us to have a typewriter with proportional spacing. So I was thinking about that. I programmed for that with the mirror of the mind. And a few days later, a week or so later, I'm driving down the street and I see a yard sale, and I can't pass up a good yard sale. So I stopped there, and there are all sorts of stuff that we could use, including an IBM executive typewriter. I said, "Can I borrow your phone for just a second?" So I called back to the print shop and I asked Georgia Shane. She's in the Sales Power book. Got her in there because she's pretty good too. I asked her, I said, "Hey, I found one. Here's what they want for it. Want me to get it?" She says, yes, get it. So if you have a success like that, you build on it. It didn't, it wasn't for me, although I did get to use it for my own projects. I got to use it to type up my very first book, self-published by Little Relax It's Good For You book, which I think is still my best-selling book. It's still popular. So I got to use it as well. Any kind of success like that you can have, and you have enough of these successes, and there can be more. I think that's what it is, because we've tried. We had the guy that wasn't a PhD, he was an EDD. We had the doctor do the test, the personality test for all the instructors. I think it was in 1981, the year I first came to work here, because I took the test. I got some information that was useful to me about my personality. I wasn't too happy that it didn't rate me very high as being an editor. I wasn't rated too well suited to be an editor, because that's what I was hired to be, was an editor, to edit the company newsletter and whatever else Alex wanted me to do. So I'm thinking, I just got hired to be an editor. And it says, then I remember, it's just about personality. No, they're right about that. I'm much too impatient to sit there and be an editor. I want to be out getting the news and getting the story and doing something more interesting than just sitting there editing what somebody else writes. I can do that if I need to. And of course, editor of a newsletter, I was writing almost everything in it as well. So that was easy to do. But I never heard another word that they were about the test and what they found out about instructors. They had all the instructors take that test to see what common denominators they could find in these successful instructors. Nothing to do with personality. It's nothing to do with how much money they have earned. There have been millionaires that failed miserably trying to go ahead and teach mind control. There was one who was holding introductory lectures on the Queen Mary. I think it's the Queen Mary out in California, docked out in California. I mean, he was attracting people to his introductory lectures by holding them on the Queen Mary. He had the money. He could afford to do that, but he couldn't get anybody to come to class. It's all about confidence. You can't buy it. You can't buy that belief. You can't buy that confidence. That's what it takes. I was so happy when I looked to see on the Silva International's website that what they had for qualifications for people to become instructors, I thought, they got it. They've got it. That's what it is. That's what's on there. And I was so happy. If you helped to do that, Lee, thank you and congratulations on getting it right. And I hope you don't mind that I borrowed a little of that. I plagiarized a little of that to put on our website. And I'm still trying my best to discourage people from becoming instructors. Alex and I just deliberately try to discourage people from becoming instructors. If they want to, I want to make sure they understand it's hard to do. It's not hard to teach. It's the easiest thing in the world to teach if you use it yourself and if you believe in it yourself. What's hard is selling it to people, finding people to teach it to. But I think those who really have that belief of all of that and can understand why people are coming to class and have the belief in that. My whole thing, I want people to come to class because I want them to want to help other people. And that's not why people are coming to class. I keep hoping that they grow into that as they take the course by the time they get to the end of it. And it happens. It happens. Tag Powell, you remember Tag Powell? My old friend from Florida. He won the President's Cup one year. We got started. He started a year after I did. His first class was in Fort Pierce, Florida. And I stopped telling people that my first class was 7 people after a couple of people I told that to went out and their first class was 7 people. So I stopped doing that. But Tag's first class was 7 people. And he had a little joke in class that we got from my instructor, Paul Francella. Tag took the course with Paul Francella too, because I was here at instructor training at that same time, I think it was. That was when I first took instructor training in 77. So Tag took the course then in fall of 1977. And Paul was had this little joke about mirror the mind. You know, we say, and at the end, after I explain the formula and go through the formula, I'll give you time to work on one problem case. And then Paul would make a little joke and say, now, if you don't have a problem to work on, just let me know and I'll loan you one of mine. And I use that joke and it always worked well for me. Well, Tag used that joke, but he was such a good salesman and he was so believable and so convincing that everybody thought that he really wanted them to do that. So they said, okay, we'll work on yours, Tag. What do you want us to work on? Or something like that. Or no, I don't know, whatever it was. He said, if you don't have one, I'll give you mine. That was the way it was. If you don't have a problem to work on, let me know and I'll give you one of mine to work on. So they all told him, okay, Tag, give us your problem to work on. What is your problem? And Tag was not that arrogant. He acted really arrogant always, but he was not that. That was all part of his charm of putting on the class. He was doing it deliberately and it worked for him. But he wasn't going to do that. I mean, this was for them. He didn't want to do that. I mean, my goodness, he didn't want. So he just thinking on his feet as fast as he could. He told me, so I told him, so what did you do? So I told him, I says, all right, let's program at my next class over in St. Petersburg, the densest population of any city in the state of Florida. And the Tampa Bay area has larger population. St. Petersburg and Tampa combined, larger than South Beach, I think, Miami and all. A lot of people there. So he was telling him, let's just program that I'll have a really good class and a lot of people will benefit from it. And he was really honestly thinking about how many people could benefit from the class. He went over to that class, and this did not dawn on me for several years, fortunately. Thank goodness I didn't think of it sooner. But several years later, when he went over to teach that class, he had standing room only. He had to turn people away. The room would only hold 30 people. He had about a half a dozen graduates were already in there. So I think he had 24 people, 24 new students. And the only reason that he had 24 new students because the rest of them couldn't fit in there. There weren't enough seats for the rest of them. Have you ever heard of that? His second class in St. Petersburg, he started 36, I think, and graduated 30 or something like that. Several of them asked for refunds, and he was doing really good at selling it. He had to work up his teaching a little bit after that. But can you imagine that? It was a number of years later, and Tag was doing so good, he'd probably won the President's Cup by that time. And I asked him, I said, Tag, did you ever think about that? It was years before I thought of it. Did you ever think about that and wonder if they might have been a connection between what all of your students were programming for you to have a big class and help a lot of people, and the fact that you had standing room only in that class in St. Pete? His eyes got big. He said, you're right. You're right. That's what happened, wasn't it? I said, yeah. So I think he had something to do with it, but yeah, I think there was something about that. He said, I think you're right. I think it was. So confidence can just mean so much. It can mean so much.
Nice.
See what happens when you get me started talking. Okay, your turn.
No, it's 1 hour, so I don't know. Lee, have you got some question, or after that?
No, that's fine. That's fine. I love the way when Ed's telling things, there's sprinkling little bits of people I know and experiences I've had. So it's a nice nostalgia trip for me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we could. Well, one other real quickie. Do you remember the book Autobiography of a Yogi?
Yes.
Yogananda?
Yeah.
Well, after I took the course, I had to get that book, of course, and I read that. And it was good. Yogananda was the first missionary to the United States from the East to bring the Eastern teachings to the United States and try to help us get on the right path. By the way, you remember Burt Goldman, of course.
Absolutely. He was turned on by Yogananda. He was a disciple.
He was baptized by Yogananda. Not what do you call it? He was actually, Burt corrected me. He said he was baptized by Yogananda. That's how big that was. But I asked him, why didn't you stay with it and not just initiated, but beyond initiated to baptize? So why didn't you stick with it? He said, well, I was just got married, just started my career as a salesman. And the thing about it was, if I had stayed and continued with that, what is it? Self-realization fellowship, is that what it is? If if he had stayed with that, then I would have had to, gotten fully immersed in the program, which included celibacy. And I was newly married, and a new salesperson. I just thought it might not fit my lifestyle quite that much to do that. But why did I mention Burt? Oh, the autobiography of a yogi. Autobiography of a yogi. Well, I've been saving notes for years, for 20 years or more. As long as I've had computer and email and can make notes, I've been making notes and saving them in a folder called Autobiography of a Lecturer, to put some of my experiences, like the night after a class, last class I taught, well, the only class I taught in Detroit, taught one up there, and we were heading for Laredo. We were finishing the class, had the car packed and ready to go. Had my girlfriend Darlene there with me. We were there, all packed up and ready to go. And I ended up getting locked in the bathroom after class. I couldn't get out. I was locked in the bathroom. Darlene sitting out there in the car. I actually got out of the bathroom, but I couldn't get out of the building where where the bar was, and the meeting rooms were upstairs. I couldn't get out. There were doors, they had locks. I couldn't pick the locks there. Couldn't get out. I could see Darlene sitting in the car. I couldn't get out. I went to level, tried to program, nothing. Spent about 20 minutes and finally figured, when is she going to come check and see? Why, because you know how it is in class. I hadn't gone for a long time, so I figured I better go before I got in the car. I figured, well, what do I do? So I did find a door that was open, but it was into the bar. But I couldn't get to the outside. So I looked around. There's a telephone. So I pick up the handset and I dial O. It says operator. And I said, what kind of operator is this? Yeah, telephone company operator or hotel operator? I'm a hotel operator. I said, oh, great. That's what I need. Says, listen, I'm in the lounge. I'm in the bar. She says, the bar is closed. I said, yeah, I know. I need to get out. Send somebody over here to get me out. Okay. Get me out of the bar. I need to get out. I was at a meeting and I got locked in. I didn't get out of the bathroom in time. They were in because I saw the guys driving off and I couldn't get them stopped. She says, no, nobody here. Everybody's gone home. Won't be anybody here until morning. Thought, all right, how do I do this? Well, I'm a reporter. I know how to get action out of people. I looked around. I said, well, all right, there's some Chivas Regal. There's some Tanqueray Gin. There's some, and I named off 3 or 4 of the most expensive alcoholic beverages that are there. I said, there's enough there to keep me occupied until morning. Don't worry about it. I'll drink up. I'll have enough to drink there. She says, hold on a minute. She came back and said, somebody's on the way over to let you out. I said, thank you. So I got out. I go up. I get in the car. And I said, and Darlene's still sitting there at level. And she looks at me. Oh, hi. I said, hi. Says, didn't you begin to wonder where I had been? She says, yeah, it has been a little while, hasn't it? Says, yeah, thanks for looking out for me. Anyway, I mean, I have such things like that, plus stories about students and successes they had and so many things, but a lot of just the things that the general public might not know, the things that we instructors go through sometimes. That class also was the first time I had ever got up to teach a class because I accidentally packed away the scale of brain evolution chart. We call that our company flag. I did not have the corporate flag. I got up there, got set up on Saturday morning. I had 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, all day Saturday and Sunday. I already packed the car. I mean, everything was packed up. I wasn't going to dig through and unpack until I got down and find that. What am I going to do? I panicked. I kind of panicked. I can't teach without the company flag up there. I got to have it. Fortunately, we had a whiteboard and I had some color markers. So I drew the scale of brain evolution chart on the whiteboard. So I had my company flag. Oh, it's interesting. Such fun teaching this course. So anything you'd like to contribute to the autobiography of a lecturer, feel free.
I've got some good stories about instructors who either left the class to go to the bathroom or fell asleep, and the whole class going to sleep.
There's one on that. Jose Silva had that. Is that the one you're thinking about?
Jose Silva himself had that, did he?
Yeah, he did that. Yeah, teaching in Mexico or somewhere. And
he fell asleep.
The way he told the story, he was going to teach the 48-hour class. People said, well, we've only got a couple of days. So everybody's got to get back to work. A whole bunch of people from different offices, different cities or something like that. They said, we can spend 2 days. if you could you teach it 48 hours straight through? He said, well, if you can take it, I can take it, he told him. So he was doing good, yeah, until he was in the middle of a conditioning cycle, and somebody came and woke him up, and everybody else was asleep or something. I don't know. I wasn't sure whether I should believe that or not, but yeah, I remember him telling that story. And the things that we can do.
When I was doing the LDS, I was literally Jose's right-hand man. I was on his right, and and there was also let's see, who was it? It was Tony. I think it was Tony and Alex. Anyway, and I said, well, shouldn't one of you guys be next to him? They said, no, it's your job to go like that if he starts to fall asleep. I can't nudge Jose Silva.
Well, he had narcolepsy. He had narcolepsy.
Huh?
He had narcolepsy.
Did he?
Yeah, that was the problem.
That's why he always his eyes being shut, and he'd always say, "No, I'm just resting my eyes."
Yeah, right.
He had narcolepsy. I had
narcolepsy.
No
well,
idea.
there was one time that did cause a problem because we had not alerted instructors. He taught the ultra seminar in a city, I won't name which one, that the instructors there had organized a meeting with somebody, I hope it's doctors or educators or somebody who could really help out, could get a lot of people into the classes. They had set up a meeting for him on Monday. So they go over there for the meeting. He taught all weekend, of course. And then, in a hotel room, staying for another hotel room, and he gets up and he gets to the meeting, and he kept dozing off to sleep. And the lecturers did not know that this was the problem. All they needed to do was just nudge him and explain, it's okay. But the people that they were trying to make a deal with just thought that was terribly rude, so they didn't want anything else to do with him after that. So that was kind of sad. So I said, we better. I mean, nothing to be embarrassed about. People have problems sometimes. He also had.
I didn't realize that because, of course, but by that time he was already in his 80s, and I thought it was just he was getting.
Well, I've also heard stories.
Sort of
I've had lecturers. I think Tag Powell might have been one who told me when he was there in St. Pete area, something like that. They're driving back or going to class or coming back from class or whatever they were doing, something, driving down the interstate. And Tag was trying to recall which exit to get off of, and sitting there sound asleep, or appeared to be sound asleep. And then just all of a sudden, turn here. This is the exit. Nothing prompted him, nothing at all. Just all of a sudden, turn here. So, even asleep. And there was a story just a couple of days ago. I saw a story on the news feed on the Bing search engine. Story on the news feed that new research, scientists have been testing brainwaves when people are sleeping. And if you were in a light level of sleep and a stranger comes in the room and there's a strange voice that you don't know, that disrupts the brainwave frequency. It changes the brainwave pattern. If it's somebody if it's people and you're familiar with, there's no threat. But if it's somebody that you don't know, then it'll alter the brainwave frequency and start getting it a little bit higher to wake you up a little bit. The most dramatic example I had of that myself, long before I took the course, back in 1968, worst year of my adult life, I think. I always slept with the radio on. Listen to because they come on with the news once an hour, had the radio network news, had a police radio in case something happened. That would tend to wake me up. But this was really something kind of strange. The first couple of newscasts, I just slept right through it. But then finally, it was maybe the second, maybe the third. It woke me up, and it woke me up in time to hear them say that Robert Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy had been assassinated and was dead. He was presidential candidate at that time, running for the Democratic primary. Odds-on favorite, certainly odds-on favorite to get the Democratic nomination, and probably would have been elected. So popular. And it was only, 5 years earlier that his brother had been assassinated and just traumatized this whole nation. I mean, for this country, that was a huge, huge deal. And I think Martin Luther King had been assassinated just a month or two before that. So that added to the trauma of it. There was no way I could go back to sleep after that. But that always kind of fascinated me, that I always assumed that I was hearing it in some way. Well, now there's evidence that it does happen. There's evidence of it. I went ahead and went into the office and just sat there. And whenever other reporters came in, Mary Ann, she came in. She had an early assignment that day. So she came in about 6 a.m. And I said, you think we ought to call the editor, Pearl Leach? Pearl was an old police reporter, was the best editor I ever had. She's tough as nails. I said, you think we ought to call Pearl? She said, I don't know. What do you think? I said, well, last time something happened, not nearly this big, and I didn't alert the editor ahead of time because there was really nothing the editor could do. There was nothing Pearl could do. So last time I did that, I got chewed out by the editor. And knowing Pearl and how much she loves politics, I think maybe we ought to call her. So I called her, and I would not have believed she could get in the car and drive across the causeway under the US 1 and across the river, under US 1, into the parking lot, come in the back door, and I would not have believed she could have done that in 10 minutes. And on top of that, she had to get dressed, put on the girdle, put on everything, makeup and everything. I won't guarantee the makeup was perfect. But she did. We were both just stunned that she got there so quickly. And she had the perfect answer for it. She had the perfect thing, and I wish we'd get back to this today in our world. She says she loved politics, was a staunch Republican. She said, I'm a staunch Republican, and I hate the Kennedys and everything they stand for. But I would rather see Bobby Kennedy elected president than to see this happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the attitude should be. I feel that same way. As terrible as it is sometimes to people get elected president and get us into all kinds of wars and what have you. There's some things are right. Some things you just got to go with. So anyway, send me some stories. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's great. So, Lee, have you got some more question or idea, or just?
No, that's fine. We covered so many things.
Yeah.
I made notes so I could remember them all, but I'm hoping we've got the recording as well.
That will be good, and we will talk about that tomorrow at our own podcast.
Yes.
That's great. So, like last time, you just take your time. If you want to repeat it, you just tell us.
Okay.
It's great for us. So just take your time, just sleep, do what you want, and when you want to continue, we just take a theme like that, and after you go, and we just adapt and ask some question when we have some.
I see. It seems like I'm getting back on a schedule finally. So if you want to try for an hour earlier, I think I could do that. Okay. I could have done 2 hours earlier today. I don't want to try too dramatic at one time. But I think we could do an hour earlier than what we've been doing. That would be fine.
No problem. If Lee can,
whatever works for y'all.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, it's still in the evening for me, so yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Then if that works, maybe we'll try 1 hour earlier than that and see how that goes too.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, let's do it a little at a time because my mind does seem to adapt to the time available. It does seem to work. Very first class I ever taught, we had no schedules. We had nothing. Had no idea how long anything was going to take. And yet everything, the entire 4 days, everything I wanted, I was within 10 to 15 minutes of the time I wanted to, where I wanted to be. So it's just amazing. The mind seems to adjust if you give it a chance.
Yeah.
And he learned that in hypnosis. He learned that in hypnosis. All righty.
Great. When you got this video on your Dropbox, can you share with me? Like that, I can share with Lee too.
When we do what?
You do the recording. So can you share with me the recording of this session?
Of this session, sure.
If it's in Dropbox, usually you can give a link to friends so they can access your Dropbox.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll figure out somewhere. Yeah, I can send you a link to my Dropbox, right?
Okay.
It would be just for the recording. Yeah, that would be
all righty. Sounds good. You didn't record?
No. When you record, I can't record at the same time, in fact.
So I didn't know that.
It's not a very big problem. So next time you record or I record, if I record,
I'll let you record. Yeah, if you do that, you can record.
Okay, no problem.
I didn't know that. I thought it was like Zoom that each person could record their own.
Yeah. No, in Jitsi we can't. That's not a big deal.
Sorry about that. All right, I'll get it to you.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Oh,
and
thank you.
see you later.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Ed. You seem to be indefatigable.
Okay. All
Ciao
right.
for now. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.